Here we go. I think we have the image there.
There we have it.
The image just released of Sir Keir Starmer being welcomed into Buckingham Palace as Prime Minister, being asked by His Majesty King Charles to form a government. That is what's happening inside Buckingham Palace right now, and then Sir Keir will leave the palace with his wife as Prime Minister, and they will head to Downing Street where the crowds await them, and he will speak to us, and we will cover that live here on the BBC. Tom Baldwin, Keir Starmer's biographer. What will this moment mean to him?
I think there'll be a thought in his head about when he came to Buckingham Palace with his dad and his mum, and Prince Charles knighted him. He doesn't use that knighted very much. You know, he prefers to be known as Keir Starmer. But it was a moment where I think he wanted to show his mum and dad that he'd done something and make them proud of him. And I think that memory will probably pop back into his head. But he won't be he won't be wallowing in a moment. I promise you, the thing about him is he's thinking about what's he going to do when he gets to the desk. What's the decisions he can start taking. This is what it's all been about. He's gone through 9 years of opposition, which he's absolutely hated every minute of it. He wasn't someone who's like sort of always wanted to be Prime Minister, practicing his sort of speech outside Downing Street naked in front of the mirror at the age of 16 and son do, right? He's someone who has done this and got into politics because he wants to change decisions and change people's lives. Now that's what he wants to do. He wants to get to that desk.
At one point he almost resigned a couple of years ago after Hartlepool, yeah.
Because he thought he wasn't making enough of a difference. He thought, if I'm going to lose this next election, why am I doing this? And it took about 24 hours for him to be persuaded. He had to talk to Vic, his wife, he had to talk to his aides. They had to persuade him not only that he could cling on, but that he could win. And that was the moment, I think, when the changes to the Labour Party really accelerated.
I'm struck by the tone, actually, the image that we just saw of Sir Keir Starmer and the King, and it's not great smiles, is it? It's very serious.
It's a serious time. It's a really serious time.
But it's how he is striking the initial tone, isn't it?
I mean, you look at the picture on the front of the Labour's manifesto. That's a picture of a guy who's tied on up, sleeves rolled up, but tied right tight, staring down the barrel of the camera. Compare that with Tony Blair in '97. You know, tie loosened, eyes gazing up at the horizon. This is a serious guy for a very, very serious time for our country and for our politics. And, you know, Christ almighty, this is, you know, it's going to be a tough ride, and he knows it, and he's preparing for those bumps in the road because they're coming.
How much pressure do you think he'll feel under? You've talked about the pressure from the public wanting change very quickly. With that huge majority, that's also pressure from the Parliamentary Labour Party, isn't there? You know, you've got this massive majority, you could do whatever you want. Pressure on him to do things and go in certain directions. With all those MPs, lots of them new, there will be a big difference in the Parliamentary Labour Party as well, won't there?
Yeah, and they're playing this game of free, you know, they've got fighting free fronts now. You know, you've got a resurgent populist far right.
Here we are, here's the moment we can see.
This will be the first time we have seen Sir Keir Starmer since he became Prime Minister. He's about to leave Buckingham Palace with his wife, Victoria, and head towards Downing Street. His new home, his new office, the centre of his government. A short drive and a big start.
Sir Keir Starmer, who is now the 7th Labour Prime Minister. He is Britain's 58th Prime Minister. And as we wait for the moment that we see him, the first time we see him as Britain's new Prime Minister, let's go to Jane Hill, who is outside the palace.
Yes, because this is a moment, isn't it? And that still image tells that story. The King, the monarch, shaking hands with the country's new Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. That image taken in the audience room on the first floor at Buckingham Palace here. And Daniela, that is a room that the two men will meet in, or scheduled to meet in, the King's health allowing, every week. This is a new relationship here.
That's right, the new Prime Minister Keir Starmer is going to get to know that room very well indeed. The private audience room at Buckingham Palace. It is within the King's private quarters here. You can see in that image personal family photos scattered around that room, and it is an important room. It'll be the place where privately, weekly, the two men will meet for their audience. There is a query in the room there, Flight Commander Will Thornton in the background there, who just police the logistics of this moment, the photograph, but it is essentially a moment that will always be private, a meeting that will always be private between the two men. What is said in that meeting will be kept within the walls of that private audience room.
And it's the King's third Prime Minister for a monarch who's been on the throne for not even 2 years, but it is his first elected Prime Minister, so constitutionally this is significant. Historically that image will be important, if only for that reason, and the changing of the guard in every sense, from one party to another, and a new moment. And as we've been reflecting, we would all perhaps love to know what conversation went on between the two men, but it is the very fact that it's private that makes it so special, I suppose.
As you say, Jane, the first elected Prime Minister for the King, but also the first time there has been a change of political party in government. So I think that in itself will be very interesting for the King. He will want to know about new policy ideas, new priorities, a new cabinet, what the direction of travel will be for this new Labour government. It is something that we know the King will be interested and engaged in. We know the kind of person he was as Prince of Wales, perhaps a little quieter as monarch he has been in terms of his views and opinions, but he'll be engaged in what's going on. Sir Clive Alderton there, the Principal Private Secretary to the King and Queen, saying his goodbyes, a kiss there for Lady Victoria Starmer as the new Prime Minister and his wife leave Buckingham Palace after that audience with the King, where Keir Starmer was asked to form a new government and become Prime Minister.
And so he is the country's Prime Minister. He is driven away with his wife. We can hear the whistles in the background amongst the crowds here behind us, the cortege behind us, all the police outriders, lots of fluorescent jackets making the way, clearing the path there for the car to have a clear run, and a safe and secure run, of course, through the streets of central London to Downing Street. It's not a long journey, not even 5 minutes really, shouldn't be any longer than that.